You know that moment when the World Cup arrives and suddenly it feels like the entire world has agreed to care about the same thing at the exact same time? Your friends start sharing predictions in group chats. Your family begins debating which team has the best chance of winning. Social media transforms into an endless stream of goals, highlights, celebrations, and emotional reactions. Everywhere you look, people seem completely absorbed by the tournament. And yet, despite all of that excitement surrounding you, you feel almost nothing. You scroll past the posts, you tune out the conversations, you hear people discussing matches and scores, but your attention quietly drifts somewhere else. For years, many people assume this reaction means something is wrong with them. After all, if billions of people are emotionally invested in something, shouldn't you feel at least a little interested too? Shouldn't some of that excitement rub off on you? It's easy to start wondering whether you're missing something important, whether you're disconnected from what everyone else seems to understand naturally. But psychology suggests something surprisingly different. In fact, not caring about the World Cup has very little to do with football itself. What makes this fascinating is that it may reveal something much deeper about how your mind naturally filters the world around you. Here's where things start to get psychologically interesting. Most people assume that attention works like a spotlight controlled entirely by conscious choice. We tend to believe that if something is important enough, popular enough, or significant enough, everyone should naturally pay attention to it. But psychologists have discovered that attention doesn't really work that way. Your brain is constantly making decisions about where to invest its limited energy. Every day, without you even realizing it, your mind sorts through thousands of pieces of information and quietly decides what deserves your focus and what doesn't. Most of these decisions happen automatically. Think about it for a moment. You don't wake up one morning and consciously decide that you're not going to care about the World Cup. You don't sit down and analyze all the reasons you should ignore it. Instead, you simply notice that the excitement everyone else seems to feel never arrives for you. It's almost like waiting for a song to move you emotionally and realizing halfway through that you're feeling absolutely nothing. The response isn't forced. It's natural, and that's exactly what makes it worth exploring. According to psychologists, interest is often less about the thing itself and more about relevance. Your brain naturally pays attention to things that connect to your personal experiences, values, goals, or emotional needs. When something feels meaningful, attention follows almost effortlessly. But when something doesn't feel personally relevant, even the biggest event in the world can struggle to capture your interest. This doesn't mean the event lacks importance, it simply means your mind has decided that its energy is needed elsewhere. Imagine your attention as a flashlight moving through a dark room. No matter how bright that flashlight is, it can only illuminate a limited number of things at once. Some people naturally point that light towards sports. Others point it towards business, creativity, relationships, technology, psychology, or personal goals. Some people are focused on building a career. Others are trying to navigate challenges at home. Some are consumed by curiosity about how the world works, while others are simply trying to make sense of their own lives. The flashlight isn't defective because it isn't pointed at football, it's simply illuminating a different part of reality. And honestly, this is where many people begin misunderstanding themselves. When everyone around you appears fascinated by the same event, it becomes easy to assume that your lack of enthusiasm is evidence of some missing piece inside you. It can feel like everyone else received a set of instructions that somehow never reached you. But here's the part most people overlook. Human beings are incredibly influenced by social momentum. When enough people care about something, we often start believing that we should care too, not because we're genuinely interested, but because belonging is one of the strongest psychological forces in human life. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as social conformity, but the basic idea is simple. We naturally look to the people around us to determine what's important. If everyone seems excited about something, our brains often interpret that excitement as evidence that the thing deserves our attention. Most of the time, this works perfectly well. It helps groups function together. It creates shared experiences. It gives people common topics of conversation. But sometimes your personal interests simply don't align with the collective enthusiasm, and when that happens, a strange feeling emerges. The feeling isn't necessarily boredom, it isn't dislike, it's pressure. You begin feeling like you should be watching the matches, you should be following the scores, you should have opinions about the teams, you should understand the conversations happening around you. But genuine interest rarely grows from obligation. In fact, forcing yourself to care about something often has the opposite effect. The more pressure you feel to become interested, the distant that interest can seem. This reminds me of something psychologists have observed in other areas of life as well. Have you ever had someone recommend a movie by telling you it's the greatest film ever made? Sometimes the recommendation works, but other times the expectation becomes so overwhelming that it actually reduces your curiosity. Before you've even watched the first scene, you're already carrying the weight of everyone else's excitement. And strangely enough, that pressure can make authentic enjoyment more difficult. Something very similar can happen with cultural events like the World Cup. The bigger the excitement becomes, the more some people instinctively step back from it, not because they're trying to be different, not because they're rebellious, but because their curiosity operates independently from social trends. They need a personal reason to care. The enthusiasm of the crowd alone isn't enough. And if that sounds familiar, psychology has some surprisingly validating news. Research on personality consistently finds that some individuals rely more heavily on internal motivations than external influences. In simple terms, they don't automatically decide what's important based on what everyone else is paying attention to. Instead, they evaluate things according to their own interests, values, and priorities. This doesn't make them antisocial. It doesn't make them detached from reality. It simply means their attention follows a different compass. And here's where things become even more interesting. For some people, not caring about the World Cup has less to do with preference and more with mental bandwidth. Modern life demands an enormous amount of psychological energy. Every day, your mind is juggling responsibilities, notifications, deadlines, financial concerns, future plans, family obligations, and countless unfinished tasks. Most people are carrying far more cognitive weight than they realize. When your mental resources become stretched, your brain starts protecting them. It becomes more selective about where attention is invested. Almost like a financial budget, your mind begins prioritizing what feels most essential. If a new topic enters your awareness and doesn't seem personally relevant, your brain may simply decide it isn't worth the additional expenditure of energy, not because the topic lacks value, but because your resources are already committed elsewhere. Imagine trying to carry 10 heavy grocery bags at the same time. Even a relatively small additional bag suddenly feels difficult to manage. The problem isn't the new bag itself, the problem is everything you're already carrying. Psychologically, attention works in a very similar way. The World Cup might represent excitement for one person and just another demand for attention to someone else. Neither response is wrong. They're simply reflections of different psychological realities. And perhaps that's one of the most important things to understand. Not caring about the World Cup doesn't automatically mean you dislike football. It doesn't mean you're disconnected from society. It doesn't mean you're incapable of excitement or shared experiences. Sometimes it simply means your mind is investing its limited resources somewhere else, somewhere that feels more meaningful, more urgent, or more personally relevant to you. If these ideas resonate with you, consider subscribing. This channel explores the hidden psychological patterns behind everyday experiences, and understanding those patterns often helps us understand ourselves a little better. Because the deeper truth here isn't really about football at all. It's about attention. It's about understanding why certain things capture your mind while others pass by unnoticed. And once you begin paying attention to that pattern, you start realizing something fascinating. What you care about may reveal more about who you are than any personality test ever could.